the opportunity that lies ahead of us in connection with the decision whether or not to raise the debt ceiling.
The debt ceiling. Today, the government reaches its legal borrowing limit, $14.3 trillion.
President Obama claims some progress in negotiations to try to find a way to raise the debt limit and keep the government from defaulting on its financial obligations.
Republican leaders are fighting with the president over how much to cut spending.
He's talking about it, but I'm not seeing real action yet.
Budget deficit is an excuse for the Republicans to undermine government, plain and simple.
Plans under Obama are making absolutely no sense.
Failing to raise the debt ceiling will be a major problem for the millions of Americans who would not receive Social Security checks.
And as we count down to a vote on the debt deal,
we need to raise debt as a country in order to really generate the kind of growth and pay the kind of commitments that we've made.
The public is split right down the middle over the president's handling of the situation.
Where is the leadership out of this White House to guide the country out of the debt mess that we are in?
Welcome to Pin the Debt on the Donkey.
We all know what the problems are, and now is the time to deal with the fiscal problems we have in an adult-like manner.
The last thing we should be doing is raising taxes on the economy.
We wouldn't be here but for these irresponsible tax cuts.
I find one concern after another in this.
We'll never default.
All this bitching about the deficit doesn't mean squat because you won't do either raise taxes or cut spending.
Our debt rating being called into question, interest rates rising, and the American people are going to pay the price.
Rescind stimulus.
What the American people want is for us to work together.
Rescind TARP.
Texas Republican Louis Gohmert said he was, quote, bloody and beaten.
The president has said he wants to cut this deficit in half.
Last-minute deal on a likely budget keeps the government running. The president signed it just moments ago.
News, the credit rating agency Standard & Poor's has decided to downgrade America's credit rating.
The battle it took has cost the country's reputation dear.
The battle for the soul of America took an interesting turn in September of 2011, when out of the blue, according to the mainstream media, one finds a group called Occupy occupying town squares, city halls, Zuccotti Park. Who are these people? Are these just college students that matter-of-factly just show up at Zuccotti Square? Are these just mom and pa coming like they did at the tea parties? No, 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 no. This is the organized left. The Occupy movement is the organized left.
Don't forget what was happening in August and September. There was a lot of talk about deficits, about balancing the budget, about keeping spending down. And the Occupy movement is very proud of the fact that they changed the conversation from cutting spending and saving money to income inequality. The people who were organizing it had a problem, which is nobody was showing up. And they were afraid it was just going to be another failed attempt at revolution in the country. So a few of them got together and started talking. One guy, Malcolm Harris, who calls himself a commie, came up with a plan. He said, I'm going to get people to come down to Zuccotti Park by creating a hoax. And he put out the word that the band Radiohead was going to be playing at the park. And that rumor went all over the internet, and suddenly a whole bunch of people started showing up. One of his best friends is a woman named Natasha Leonard. Natasha Leonard was a writer who worked for the New York Times. So he'd been talking about this hoax, and she'd retweeted it.
But Radiohead didn't show because these cynical community organizers knew that that would lure them in.
The big turning point for Occupy was October on the March on the Brooklyn Bridge.
The Radiohead thing got some people down. They said, what's the next thing that we can orchestrate? I don't know, let's walk on the Brooklyn Bridge in the middle of the day in the largest city of the world and stop traffic.
They got a bunch of people to show up, and they got the one thing that Occupy needs to get media, which is they got arrested. They don't get media unless there's arrest or violence.
Since you have refused to leave this roadway, I am ordering your arrest for disorderly conduct.
It was the instigation that caused the mainstream media to say, good, all right, we're going to start paying attention to you. It was orchestrated by Natasha Leonard from the New York Times.
Being an outright anti-authoritarian or an anarchist is not really something that people like to be live streamed across the world with a fucking police pen around you. So there is a silencing that's sort of gone on without much addressing, because to address it would be to out oneself.
The person who's supposedly objectively covering the event is actually an activist that we caught on camera who's trying to figure out ways to manipulate the audience to become supporters of Occupy Wall Street. The thing couldn't be more cynical.
Tell us about your experiences on the Brooklyn Bridge, one of the largest mass protests in U.S. history. More than 700 people arrested. You were swept up as well?
Absolutely. So I was there that day live reporting for The Times, and at the base of the bridge saw a huge surge of hundreds of people at the entrance taking the bridge.
If you do not wish to be arrested, you must leave this area now.
You did not get arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge that day unless you wanted to. So the next day, the headlines are, New York Times reporter arrested on Brooklyn Bridge. And it makes it seem like the police, the fascist police, came along and were sweeping up everybody and got a New York Times reporter.
Began with a small, disorganized protest on Wall Street in Lower Manhattan here in New York, has grown today to demonstrations nationwide.
Protesters may still be working to define their message, but the complaints of corporate greed and social inequality are resonating far beyond the streets of New York.
What started as less than a dozen college students camping out in a park near the New York Stock Exchange is now hundreds of protesters. There are all kinds of people there. Babies, teachers, cheerleaders, Uncle Santa, and that. But what are they protesting? They were happy to take some time from their books, catered lunch. Yeah, there was catered lunch. Computers, lots of MacBooks, and phones to help us get to the bottom of it. What do you do for a living?
I'm a software developer.
Software developer.
Yes.
So currently employed or unemployed?
Unemployed.
Unemployed.
Unemployed, we like to call it.
Unemployed.
It's called Occupy Wall Street.
If I were Erin Burnett, I would be so humiliated by that report because she completely misses the point.
I think that Erin Burnett is a great example here of somebody who used to work for CNBC, who just announced her engagement, of course, to a banking executive.
Erin Burnett, how dare you
Seriously, have you ever seen anything so smug in your entire life?
Lower Manhattan. At least 25 cities from coast to coast have seen financial industry protests this weekend.
Protests against Wall Street are spreading today to a number of major U.S. cities, including right here in the nation's capital. President Obama says the demonstrations are expressing the frustration that so many Americans feel right now about the economy, jobs, and the fallout from the financial crisis.
The protesters are giving voice to a more broad-based frustration about how our financial system works.
God bless them for their spontaneity. It's young, it's spontaneous, and it's going to be effective.
I agree with your goals, Occupy Wall Street.
I applaud what the Wall Street demonstrators are talking about.
There needs to be a many-pronged approach. Civil disobedience on Wall Street is one approach.
They, like you and me, are mad at...
Most of the media attention they have received has been the violent and rather outrageous police tactics used against the protesters.
What's happening here is a real grassroots movement, unlike the Tea Party, which is a manufactured movement.
These young people are so impressive. They were out there, they're speaking for millions of people, and I think we should stand with these young people. I'm so proud of them, I don't know what to do myself.
I think the energy coming out of the Wall Street protesters is always a good thing.
And just exciting to what's going on down an M of citizen protest, progressive politics, people finally
standing up to the status quo, which is wonderful to see.
This on Occupy Wall Street is a real grassroots people movement with a message.
I'm with them emotionally, viscerally, in my bones. I know they're right.
This is the young people expressing themselves.
I'm here because I agree with you.
Everyone was extraordinarily well behaved.
It's Vice President Biden select the Tea Party. Pelosi supports them.
So every grouping begins with banging drums.
They can't continue to be pulled to the right by the radical, unrealistic, unreasonable, and unpopular faction, the Tea Party.
The Tea Party repulses me.
When I visited Occupy D.C., everyone was extraordinarily well behaved.
It's time to make them pay.
I'm with the people in Manhattan. I'm with the people who are occupying Wall Street. That's what my music's about.
I salute you for thinking freely. There's sort of a grassroots thing. It's taking place all over the country.
What the left needs is something to put the wind at the back of the president, and this could be...
I'm so impressed by what I'm seeing here.
You know, it's not it's people getting pissed off doing what Americans do.
This was not done spontaneously. This was community organized. We knew this. We saw it coming. We found the emails. Guess who was on that email chain? MSNBC, Dylan Ratigan, Rolling Political at Matt Taibbi.
What were they doing in this email? They were telling these kids how they could orchestrate a movement from scratch. What do they want from them to be this is humanly possible? They said, don't stand for anything. Why not stand for? That's kind of crazy if you're going to be a political movement, because they wanted to draw in as many naive people as humanly possible.
Tell me about your sign. My sign? It just says, throw me a bone in my tuition. Why? Why? Because I think these billionaires are getting a lot of money just out of greed. They're exploiting people, the underclass, like lower class people, middle class people. How do they do that? How do they do that? Just through, well, I guess it has to do with the government as well. For example, we get taxed more than they do. That's not true. That's not true.
and they would then project onto this amorphous mass that the media is saying is the greatest thing since sliced bread, that they would go, I like this group. These are my new friends. I'm having sex with them. There's a guy with a turntable. He's playing music. A guy's got a rat and a gerbil on his shoulders. It's fun. We're having fun. They wanted to create Woodstock.
This is like a never-ending festival. Like when the sun is out and then people are playing, it's like fun. You know what I'm saying? Like it's fun. This never happens, and like I want to be a part of it.
Why should anyone pay for your college tuition?
Why?
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
No, but I mean, give me the reason for it. Like, why should... I mean, I'd quite like a new car. Should that be paid for?
Your car?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's whatever. People can say whatever they want.
What you've done is you've basically written stuff you want on a sign, like a Christmas list, and then you're holding it in the air.
Yeah, why not?
Joining me now, Mark Epstein, president of Milk Street Cafe on Wall Street. Mark, welcome to the show, and tell me, how is your business being impacted?
Our business started slowing down because we had these police barriers in front of our restaurant.
She and the owner of a hot dog cart say that they were forced out of business by Occupy protesters who urinated on their carts.
Our base customers told me they cannot come and visit us any longer.
And so, when you get the left media looking at something like Occupy, they idolize them. They sort of view them as heroic. Even though they know that what some of these guys are doing is they're out for the destruction of America as we know it.
I knew that I had to go to Occupy in order to see what it was like. And I learned something. Go into those crowds and start asking the people there that are supposedly there for passion and because they agree on the issue. All I needed to know about Occupy, I found out at Occupy Los Angeles. They were organized. I started finding out that they were there because of the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, which gave $100 million to Barack Obama's presidency. SEIU is there with other community organizing groups, other unions, including the nurses union, and they're also there with an amalgam of young idealistic people, all there because they can't stand capitalism. But my shenanigans were stopped by an individual who was put on me. He saw who I was. He knew I was there to capture on video the essence of the Occupy movement. Anthony Navarrete, General Services Worksite Organizer, SEIU. So you're my minder. But you're following me everywhere I go. So he followed me from person to person to person when I asked the very basic question, capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down? Capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down?
He's going to joke you up.
All right. Capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down? Capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Guys up, be careful.
Capitalism, thumbs up or thumbs down? He started to tell them, stop it, he's trying to get you. Exactly. Are you not a you're not a capitalist?
You have to help
what are you?
Stop.
What are you?
I'm a socialist.
You are?
Yes.
The fuel of the movement was the anxiety that has been built up in youth, in colleges and K through 12s, feeding these kids that our system is inherently bad and that it needs to be overthrown. And where did you learn that philosophy?
Where did I learn it? I mean, I could name you 3 people who led me.
Okay.
You know? Professor in college, best friend in prison, and professor in graduate school. And the most powerful message was a friend in prison. Watching what goes on in the prison industrial complex in this country is what did it for me.
What was he in prison for?
Robbery.
Okay.
Because he was poor.
Okay. As if being poor justifies robbing, assaulting a person. And so in the name of social justice, in the name of economic equality, all the buzzwords that you see there, these people feel justified, morally justified, to commit crimes.
Have people been well behaved? Well, no.
There's sexual assault going on. We're trying to deal with that.
Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, it's not synonymous with good behavior.
Oh, so would you say that right now with the current system they have that it's unsafe for women?
Yeah.
This woman who didn't want to be identified claims she was raped here in one of the tents.
Then you got security over here talking about they don't know who did what, they didn't know nothing was happening, they don't know nothing, so what kind of security is that?
So there was a guy that got raped too here, a deaf younger man.
And there's raping and there's pillaging and there's pooping, and the mainstream media ignores it.
So they can be as filthy and they could rape people if you want to make stuff up. But the fact is nobody really cares about it.
They say they'll handle it themselves and don't need the media or police.
This is a personal dispute, and people actively need to go through mediation.
People are being assaulted, people are being raped.
We understand that, but we have a security team that actively deals with these situations.
No one from the Occupy group has been willing to help her identify and catch her attacker.
It's an entire attitude and community of apathy, and I'm a part of it, and that's why I'm leaving.
Like, you have hippies in the park that actually take acid every day.
One man directed us to a tent where from the entrance our cameras caught evidence of drug use and paraphernalia.
Don't, like, tell nobody about this, because I'm not supposed to say that shit.
Grade school students were forced to walk a gauntlet of screaming protesters just to get to school. Was it fun or was it scary?
It was scary.
NYPD helped funnel the children, anything to ease their fears, while some protesters chanted, "Follow those kids."
As if this is supposed to be a good organization, it isn't. It's a crop.
The reality is that these people have set off a powder keg, and what is gonna happen, nobody knows. I don't think they know, and it has the potential of becoming incredibly violent. They are discussing intents at night with drugs and weapons, that they are holding violence till it is going to work at its maximum capacity. I was there with them getting fed poached salmon after I was in a tent with some anarchists doing shrooms, discussing whether or not they were going to assassinate people and when that might happen.
All you have to do is go to an occupation. All you have to do is look with your own eyes. All you have to do is ask, are you a socialist? Do you want to overthrow this government? Do you want to create a tension with the police? Do you want the police to tear gas you? Go ahead, arrest me. What do you think I came here for? To fuck around? I came here to fuck around? No, but they want it. They want the revolution. This is how the left goes. This is the left in Venezuela. This is the left in Cuba. Wherever the left goes, they want to foment a revolution.
The normal avenues of changing the system by using the system aren't necessarily going to work.
We want solutions, and capitalism is not working. A resource-based economy is solution. We have to
Leave now and disperse immediately, or you will be arrested for disorderly conduct.
Community organizing is not the American people getting together to help your next door neighbor put food into the cupboard. Community organizing are radicals, anarchists, socialists, communists, public sector unions who are hell-bent on a nihilistic destruction of everything that people in America care for. These people hate this country, they hate the Constitution, they hate freedom, they hate liberty.
And that mic check thing, like if I say mic check, you know, a bunch of people say mic check. Well, if I'm a stranger and they don't know me, and I say mic check, no one's going to say mic check back.
Hey, I'm mic checking. Yeah.
I've already got the mic check. Mic check. Mic check. This is the people's mic, is it not?
Yeah, but we don't like what you're saying, so we're not repeating it. That's how the people's mic works.
What they do is they want to present this image that they're a democracy, a true, pure democracy.
We have to overthrow capitalism, but we can reinstate democracy as it was meant to be.
And what they are really is a dictatorship, and the people are all fools into thinking they're in some sort of democracy. They don't know who's really running things behind the curtain.
Hello, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous.
Anonymous has a huge role in this.
On September 17th, Anonymous will flood into Lower Manhattan, set up tents, kitchens, peaceful barricades, and occupy Wall Street for a few months.
You have a lot of hackers that have teamed up with the institutional left to help push the Occupy movement forward.
What they're doing is coordinating these people under one umbrella and that they can all work there.
And that is essentially what we're facing with Occupy Wall Street. This is not a free form. There's a reason it happened all across the country at exactly the same time. This is completely coordinated, and Anonymous is a huge part of the organization of be here now, you know, do this now, say these things now.
The voice of the people had been silenced. The voice of the people had been silenced. But not today. But not today. Not this day. Not this day. Today we stand in solidarity. Today we stand in solidarity. Move to amend. Move to amend. Because we know. Because we know. That with unity. With solidarity. With solidarity. And with peace. And with peace. Comes real change for the better.
Occupy and Anonymous are kind of separate, but they work together. Anonymous is their muscle. Occupy does something, you write that you don't like it. Occupy narcs you out to Anonymous. Anonymous comes after you.
We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Some of them are really quite dangerous. You have hackers that are able to get into government databases. You have hackers that are stealing companies' private emails and using that to essentially hold companies hostage. You have hackers that are essentially blackmailing private citizens.
It's all about intimidation, and it's all about getting you to shut up.
Why the fuck are your badge numbers? Why the fuck are your badge numbers? And why the fuck do you have weapons?
What is the point? What are you trying to do? What they want to do is they want to make it seem like they're going to harm you.
Shut up! Answer me! What are your badge numbers? What's your badge number? 245! I'll remember you, 245! I'll remember you!
They put your home address, phone number, put your email, photo.
They do not care about what happens to you. The whole point is they want somebody to come after you. My name is on everything that I publish on the internet. My name is on my Twitter account. You can find my name. You can find my business. It's all there. I have nothing to hide. I don't hide. These people are cowards. If you hide behind your computer screen and put stuff out about people that is not true simply to silence them, you are a coward.
The thing that really ties in the anarchist movement and actually the Obama administration are the unions. They wanted to make sure that these direct actions, largely against the banks, against Bank of America, against Wells Fargo, who they have long-running disputes with, got violent and put the pressure on.
You know, so there was a report in Crain's today about a bunch of New York City unions that are going to go down and join the protests on Wednesday, which I think was a sort of major step. Which particular transit workers are a good militant union. They had a strike here in New York a few years ago.
We were live streaming, and we're at the front of this march in San Francisco. And it's a march that consisted of students. They bussed students in. They brought people from Cal Berkeley. They brought people from Stanford. And the students are all at the back of the march.
Follow me. This way.
We get near Bank of America, and because I'm at the front of the march, I see people rush up, and they're all wearing these union shirts, these yellow community organizer union shirts. and they're standing at the front of the bank, waving people in. By the time the first group of people got up and ran in the bank, the students who were at the back of the line, they had no idea that they'd been waved in by the union. All they knew is everyone was going into the bank, so they all go into the bank too. So we're inside the bank, and I notice there's a guy dressed well, and he's texting. So I asked him, do you work for the bank? He goes, no, I work for United Auto Workers. So what was happening was the union's choreographing this whole thing, and they're obviously texting back and making sure it's going right.
Bank of America has signed a citizen's arrest for trespassing. Let them go!
But who ends up getting arrested are the students.
They can only trick people for so long. They use these college kids because they're the ones out there that are searching for something. And they're basically preying on the fact that the job system is horrible, the education system is horrible, and these kids are frustrated.
What's a PSLweb.org? What is that?
What is this?
Yeah.
I actually know. Someone gives me and I'm just repping it.
Oh, okay, cool.
For sure, yeah.
Thanks. So she doesn't know what sign she's holding.
They're pawns in their game. They're using people that are not aware that they're being used to go out there and to do their bidding.
Are you getting paid right now?
Yeah, we all getting paid for this. Yeah.
How much are you guys getting paid?
It's like $60 per head.
Are you serious? Yeah. How did they find you?
I mean, basically, we are all the people who are like out of work right now, who on the bench, haven't been out of work for about a year or two, something like that. So, yeah.
They just found you guys?
Nah, it's a list. It's a list.
It's a list of people? And you're part of a union, though.
Yeah.
And do you know what you guys are, like, what this is?
Nah, I have.
You don't know what this event is, CPAC?
They just told me you want to make $60, so come on.
I get a phone call from a journalist by the name of Nina Eason, and she is outraged because in her neighborhood in Chevy Chase, Maryland, she sees a group of people in a residential neighborhood being dropped off, busloads of community organizers from the SEIU there to protest on the front lawn of an executive from Bank of America.
We are here at Mr. Greg Bear's house. Mr. Greg Bear is a lobbyist that works for Bank of America.
Who was home on this Saturday? Their 14-year-old kid who became locked in the bathroom because he was frightened to death because on his front lawn were SEIU bullhorns with people that didn't even know why they were there chanting against Bank of America. This is what community organizing is.
Fighting against Bank of America!
Will we take back our democracy?
Yeah! Take it back! Take it back!
When they did things like march on people's houses, one is to essentially villainize our entrepreneurs.
Very ironic to me that you had this movement. This seemed that it began as an organic movement of concerned citizens who were concerned with class war being perpetrated by the rich, by the 1% against the middle class.
When we elected Barack Obama and he carried the state...
I met Jimmy Hoffa at a Cincinnati rally just days after he had endorsed Occupy on the Ed Schultz show. I went up to Jimmy Hoffa and I said, okay, Mr. Hoffa, you made $300,000 last year directly from the dues, from the paychecks of people making 30 or 40 grand a year.
You made $300,000 last year, and they're wondering why the wealth can't be spread around back to the due payers.
Well, I think that the answer is what we've got to do is have more taxes on people,
right?
And I think we raise the taxes on the rich people in this country.
You talk about class war, and you talk about wanting to spread the wealth around. Why can't you spread that wealth around? There's no more definitive portrait of actual class war than that between six-figure union bosses and middle-class workers who get their paychecks siphoned every month by these people.
The richest 400, we know about them, right? Yep. They have more wealth than 150 million Americans combined. All right, 100 people. And this man is requesting, and I think it's a very simple request, would each of these 400 just give back $1 million?
How about $1 million of your 50 million? How about $1 million of your 50 million? How much your own 50 million are you going to donate to Occupy PDX? You don't want to answer that? Aren't you part of the 1%?
It's not just that they're hypocritical, they are, but it's intentionally hypocritical. They want to put out one narrative, and they want to live a different way.
From New York to LA, across the country, one of the things about the Occupy movement that you won't see is a lot of black people, because they're being readied for part 2, and that's race warfare.
There's a lot of work that this movement needs to do.
What you will see is a lot of young, rich, white liberal elites. The same type of rich, white liberal elites that ran Acorn when I was there. And I've said this before, but Bertha Lewis and I were the only 2 blacks on national staff. The rest of them were these kids with trust funds that were able to afford what Acorn paid them, that were going out into these communities and pretending to represent black people. But if they were ever confronted, they took off and ran because they really did not speak for the people.
Help us now. Help us. They don't want to do this. Fuck these people up there. Fuck these assholes in their fucking yachts. They aren't in here, and they are not in our country. They are not American. Get them the fuck out of here. Get them the fuck out of here. This is ours. This is Liberty Plaza.
The mainstream media did something pretty interesting. They were going to do everything they could to ignore the rapes. They were going to do everything they could to ignore the emails that showed that they were going to target and make sure that the police were targeted and made out to be the bad guys in YouTube clips.
Most of the media attention they have received thus far has been because of violent and rather outrageous police tactics used against the protesters.
You have divided our communities through your poor policing via cop violence for too long. I say take the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, and go back to hell where your fucking guns came from.
The entire part of the riots and the violence was because the Oakland occupiers decided to occupy a vacant building, and that's the next step, to take over properties and homes.
As things got closer to the end, which for us happened on the 12th and the 13th of November, it got really ugly.
We're the 99%. We don't want you here. And we don't want you covering when they fucking close our bathrooms. Get your hands. You fucking loser. You're a fucking asshole piece of shit. Nazi fucking American. Fuck away from me. Come on here. Fuck away from me, you piece of shit. You are a piece of shit. Dude, you are a piece of fucking shit. I can see it in your fucking face. Fuck away from me.
Why were the bathrooms closed? It's because Nick Fish, who is the person who's in charge of the parks in Portland, had said, look, it's so bad in those bathrooms. You're finding sharp objects, hypodermic needles. I am no longer sending my people into those bathrooms because it's a safety hazard. I'm not sending them in there anymore.
Get the fuck away from us. Don't come back. You're not welcome here.
The Occupy movement is inherently intimidating. They're occupying, they're taking property that is not theirs, and they're occupying that space, and go ahead and move us out of here, which is why it leads to conflict.
I'm just saying fucking tag corporations do that shit.
Quit with more honor than you motherfuckers.
What's your pants, nigga? I'm talking to you.
Better not try to take our library.
If you remain in the roadway and show the intent to engage in physical resistance to removal or if emergency circumstances require, you may be subject to the use of force.
In some instances, you are going to see that the anarchists are going after minority police officers because to them they represent someone that is part of the system. They're not thinking like the rest of the blacks are supposed to be thinking. They're not victims, they're part of the problem.
You are
are what you are, Jim Cold nigga. That's what you are. You are Jim Cold nigga. Nigger. You nigger. No, he's a fucking Jim Cold nigga.
And so oftentimes, when there is a black law enforcement officer, that officer receives worse treatment than a white officer does.
This area is closed. You need to exit. Get behind you. Back up. Back up. Just shove it up your ass. Get behind you. People can get out. Let's go.
There's no reason why we can't fucking do this.
What about this one? This is my second warning.
What did you do, Emily?
I was standing on the sidewalk. They grabbed me and threw me into the street.
This is the hard left that are recruiting these kids to make them realize, hey, you need to create crisis situations. You need to create violence. You need to create riots in Oakland where we're taking over buildings and the cops are coming in and you're resisting. That makes us look like victims. If you are the innocent victims taking these things back and the police are attacking you, we're the ones who Americans will sympathize with, saying these kids just need a way to make it in our society, and essentially that's the plan, to push it farther and farther into the violence.
Bye what? Don't touch. You're getting my shit, bro.
My First Amendment right to film this.
You're in my country.
It's a public space.
Got it?
Public officials. First Amendment
You want to say again? You're fucking his face on.
Some neighbors have complained of an increasing rat population.
This is rat infected. There's rats coming through here like crazy.
Go up here. Go up here. Quick. Shoot her.
Hundreds of police are starting to evict Occupy Wall Street protesters from their base.
The left is a destructive force. There was a time when the left had an idea of what it wanted to achieve. It wanted a classless society. The left's ideas sound wonderful. They're so noble. We'll help the poor, defend minorities, we're going to liberate people from oppression. But the practice of the left is quite the opposite.
Our strategy is to occupy, reoccupy, and reoccupy.
And so the left became an entirely negative force. It is a force that attacks capitalism as greedy, as oppressive, racist, sexist, homophobic.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, right-wing bigots, go away!
But it really has no idea, no clue as to what to replace it with. It is a nihilism.
3, 2, 1!
It was the confrontation Oakland wanted to avoid. A small crowd of vandals threw Molotov cocktails and chunks of concrete at police.
Cesar Chavez did this for you to be a fucking sellout?
I kind of like it that they're sort of militantly vague at this point.
Why are you putting children in harm's way?
They're my children.
Yeah, well, why would you do that?
We know they're not enough to say we have.
What are you doing?
Speak up.
We are the 99%, and we don't want war, and we don't want any violence.
In the 60s, there was an SDS leader who said, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. We attacked our own country as the aggressor in Vietnam and the occupier and the oppressor.
A small group of yippies seeking a confrontation marched at night on the South Vietnamese embassy. Washington police used tear gas to drive them away.
America left Vietnam thanks to the pressures that we in the New Left had put on. A new Congress came into Washington. It was the post-Watergate Congress. This was filled with left-wingers, and the first thing they did was to cut off the aid to the Cambodian and Vietnamese regimes.
People, lorries and cars, all chasing one American evacuation convoy after the other. But the embassy gates were closed, and we, like the frightened Vietnamese and their families, had to fight and claw our way up. Any chance they thought was better than none.
America left, and the communists began to slaughter Cambodians and Vietnamese. And before they were through, they had slaughtered 2.5 million poor Indo-Chinese. During the time the communists were slaughtering them, there was not one demonstration by the left against their depredations, their oppression, their genocide.
What America doesn't understand is, yes, anti-war, oh, that's nice, we don't want to kill people, but the reality is it's anti-American war because they essentially want this empire to crumble.
This was the great triumph, my generation of the left. We forced America's retreat from Vietnam.
In the 60s and the early 70s, it wasn't a peace and justice movement. We were in a Cold War. It was an armed struggle for socialist revolution that was backed by the Soviets and backed by Cuba and backed by a number of our nation's enemies in the Viet Cong.
Communism killed 100 million people in its course in peacetime, not in war, but in peacetime, and bankrupted whole continents, created unimaginable poverty for a billion. Artificial mass station where millions upon millions of people died because of government schemes that didn't work showed that this socialist idea is a bankrupt idea. There's nothing there.
And Che had the concept of 2, 3, many. 2, 3, many referred to an effort to create 2, 3, many Vietnams so that American young fighting men would die and there wouldn't be enough men left for America to have its empire and its influence in the world, which benefited the Soviets. I looked at Che and I used to admire him. I never knew about the fact that he assassinated his opponents, that he rounded up anarchists, rounded up anyone who disagreed with him and killed them.
During that time, I got involved with the Black Panther Party. I was introduced to Huey Newton.
All power to the people is becoming a reality because the people have come out here to demand that Huey P. Newton be set free.
This is the glorification of revolution.
The people have a right, they're totally justified in going out into the streets, taking up arms, and dealing with that situation.
It's the glorification of those who take up arms and commit violent acts against the state and against capitalism and against the American way of life. And then the mainstream media comes in and provides cover for them, blames it on the cops, blames it on the system.
What he knows, not that you are willing to die, but that you are willing to kill for your freedom.
So I learned a lot of lessons here. I learned that people who were in the left, like the Panthers, could be killers, and they would be protected by the rest of the left, which is exactly what happened in the whole communist movement. All the horrific crimes of Stalin were covered up by idealistic leftists. So were the Panthers' crimes.
I say violence is necessary. We will use that violence to rid ourselves of oppression if necessary.
To pick up the gun off the page. Revolution has come off the page.
Violence is a part of America's culture. It is as American as cherry pie.
And all the while they say they're about peace, they glorify these violent people who have historically, factually been violent. And then they wonder why their young people commit acts of violence.
Police raided Black Panther headquarters in Chicago. 2 Black Panthers were killed, but the Panthers said that police had broken in and killed one man at close range as he slept.
That's exactly what the anti-war movement became. It has nothing to do with stopping the war, and Occupy has nothing to do with banks. It has everything to do with using Saul Alinsky leftist tactics to put their enemies on the defensive.
We have gone on the offensive. It is we who call the shots now.
This movement, the entire left movement, started in the 60s with Students for a Democratic Society. You're looking at Bill Ayers, you're looking at Andy Stern, Jim Wallace. All these people were militant kids in the 60s, and what they've done is they've organized.
Come on, we gotta fight it out. Where the only power we can build is that's the base. We gotta build a strong base, and someday we gotta knock those motherfuckers who control this thing right on their ass.
So I actually traced some of the roots of Occupy to Saul Alinsky in the 1930s. Saul Alinsky has talked about how his mentor in the 1930s was Frank Nitti, the enforcer of the Capone gang. What was happening in the 1930s with the mob? What was happening was Prohibition had ended, so the mob needed a new way to make money. And what they did was they moved into labor. They moved into the unions. So the BSEIU was one of the unions that they were involved with, and that later became the SEIU. And one of the things that happens is you get this very deceptive dual organization where they say they're doing one thing, but what's really happening is something else. They were just getting people rich who were in the union racket. And Alinsky was absolutely part of that movement.
Essentially what we're facing is the 1930s and the 1960s just basically colliding with each other in one period of history.
The left learned one thing from the 1960s, from its failures in the 60s, and that is don't telegraph your goals. Don't tell people that you want to overthrow the government, that you have been working on overthrowing the government and destroying American civilization for 40 years. You pretend to be interested in issues. You're a peace activist, you're a civil rights activist, you're upset about the financial crisis of 2008. Nonsense. Your goal has always been the same, which is to destroy a society that you're alienated from, that you basically hate, America.
This is one of those things where it's all hiding in plain sight.
This is just a rebirth of the communist movement. Of course, they don't talk about the dictatorship of the proletariat. They have the same obliviousness to what they're going to achieve.
And people all over this protesting everything about capitalism were the same people who were behind what we now call Occupy.
There's a direct parallel to what's happened with Occupy. People who are on the ground at Occupy, people living in tents, are starting to realize there's what they call a secret society running things at Occupy.
This movement was planned a year ago by the SEIU. These demonstrations were planned. It's all on tape. It's an organized thing. Just like Justice for Janitors, Stephen Lerner is the person who, planned this out.
We need to disrupt and create uncertainty. Start to destabilize the culture and power and start to rebuild a movement. That could really upset people. But I don't think this kind of movement can happen unless actually leaders and other activists take the lead. And so we're going to roll out an exciting campaign that takes more than states that is really about challenge the powerful. We get enough people together starting now to really have a week of action in New York, a week of civil disobedience, direct action, all over the city. We hope to sort of inspire a much bigger movement about redistributing wealth and power in the country.
They call it a leaderless movement, but there really are leaders.
Among its leaders were Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, a Castro-loving, anti-American.
Pay attention to this person. Pay attention to Medea Benjamin with her group Global Exchange, who does freedom tours of Venezuela. And when I met with the Venezuelan government, her number was on speed dial on their cell phone.
Lisa Fithian, who is the director of street operations for Occupy Wall Street.
We may not see the revolution in this moment, but our children are coming ahead and our work is for them. We're laying the ground for them. So everything we're doing is building that new world now. Need that, I'm going to come back. So I said shut this down before our link do our barricades, we fucking shut it down.
Lisa Fithian, known, established, professional anarchist. She works for the unions to go in and do direct action training.
She worked with Leslie Kagan, who was the head of this anti-Iraq movement, who was a communist. She was active in the 80s, supporting the communists in Central America. She's a supporter of Hamas in the Middle East.
We've had people from around the world doing justice to try and help the people of Gaza and break the blockade.
You're talking about people who support Hamas.
Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea.
You have movements that want to abolish the state of Israel, not just want to defend and make better conditions for Palestinians, but who are actually calling for no justice, no peace until Israel is gone. This is insanity. These are the people that are the most concerning of the Occupy movement. To most people, Hurricane Katrina was a natural disaster. It was a hurricane that came and it destroyed homes, it killed thousands of people. But to the far left, Hurricane Katrina was all about the occupation of the Ninth Ward. It was the first time that all of these different groups came together under one banner to work together. You had the eco-terrorism groups under Scott Crow, the Animal and Earth Liberation Front. You had Lisa Fithian with her radical groups and her anti-war Cindy Sheehan stuff. You had Code Pink. You had the Black Panther Party, the new Black Panther Party. You had different movements from around the world coming in. They saw it as a means to work together, finally, for the revolution and to foment some type of radical movement because people were mad at the U.S. government. And from that, those same people, those same dollars, those same funders, those same leaders, they started the Occupy movement.
In 2008, there were a bunch of people, not unlike the Occupy movement, organized by the International Socialists, the International Anarchists, that created what they called the RNC Greeting Committee. And that was going to be a bunch of protests outside of the Republican National Convention to try and stifle that meeting of people. Lisa Fithian was part of this. Code Pink was part of this. Brandon Darby at that time was an activist on the left who, when he found out that two guys that he was working with that were part of the RNC that worked with Lisa Fithian. These two guys were planning on creating Molotov cocktails to throw on the police.
The more I find about these young men as well,
like what?
To me that, they are two young men from Midland, Texas, who are angry at our government, who wanted to learn about organizing, and they wanted to make a difference in this world.
These two guys tried to firebomb the 2008 Republican National Convention. And when my identity came out as having worked undercover with the FBI, very quickly and immediately, the story was framed very differently. It wasn't that there had been people on the far left political movement in the peace and justice community who made bombs. The story was framed, peace activists feel betrayed by their government. The New York Times framed it. And I said to the writer, I said, why on earth is this a story? You know, why isn't the story that the peace and justice community spawned this violence? And they said, that's not where our editors want to go, man. I'm sorry.
All right, guys, let's keep this as peaceful as possible.
If you think about what the Occupy movement's doing, you'll hear all the time nonviolent or nonviolent movement. But what's interesting is within the Occupy movement itself, the definition of nonviolent changes. So if you go up to a Bank of America or Wells Fargo and you start smashing the windows, or if you throw a chair through a Whole Foods market, that's considered nonviolent because you're not hurting people. And again, this goes back to the Earth Liberation Front, where they can set fire to a ski lodge, and as long as no people are injured this time, then it's considered nonviolent. To a lot of people in the Occupy movement, particularly the professional anarchists among them, nonviolence doesn't count if it's property.
Something's wrong with the rhetoric here. The idea that this is terrorism, destruction of property, is not in and of itself terrorism, not every time.
People like Bill Ayers has worked his entire life for this situation.
The idea man behind Occupy Wall Street.
The man behind the drive is Kalle Lawson, editor-in-chief of Adbusters magazine.
His career was attacking consumerism and consumer society, that people should go on strike and not buy things.
So I think that they want to generate as much consumption as they can, and they don't like dissenting voices like this coming on.
Whether you're talking about William Ayres or Lisa Fithian or Leslie Kagan or any of these radicals.
The same old far-left players who were part of what happened in New Orleans, the same old far-left players who were part of what happened in Seattle, the same old far-left players who have been in trouble or been under investigation for eco-terrorism, arsons, terroristic acts that scare the hell out of other Americans, the same people who have been on Gaza flotillas violating Israelis' embargo against weapons. It's the convergence of all of these disparate groups.
Stop killing animals. Save the environment.
Let's attack the United States' strength through environmental policies. Let's attack the United States law enforcement.
You're gonna get fired as a cop because you're a bad cop.
Let's attack the judicial system. Let's attack the criminal justice system. Everything came together for Occupy.
The left has utter contempt for America and its institutions.
We're supposed to respect these institutions. Do you respect these institutions today?
It wants to create chaos, because out of chaos, they can get power.
By the end of the year, Time magazine, meaning the mainstream media, goes along and declares Occupy the story of the year. Bullshit. Occupy is not the story of the year. The American people never got the true story of the Occupy movement.
They're preparing the country for war.
This is a fight for the heart and soul of the labor movement.
President Obama, this is your army. We are ready to march. Take these son of a bitches out and give America back to America where we belong.
President Obama is with Jimmy Hoffa, and they basically say, of Wisconsin, we're going after you. That is when these on the ground trying to basically start a war on the grounds at the Capitol. And they bust their people in Wisconsin. They bust people in. This is community organizing.
The union buses started showing up, and they got really aggressive, and I said, well, can any of you tell me why you're here? And the guy got in my face, got really mad, told me that I could F off and a number of other things. And then about that point, a little while later, people started recognizing me, and they started to give me hell about the fact that I had worked with the FBI and sold out their movement.
Tell your story, because I'll do it for you if you don't.
Go ahead, tell my story.
Aren't you the cat from Common Ground?
Am I the cat? I'm a co-founder.
You're a co-founder of Common Ground, then you turned around and sold everybody out, right?
I did what?
You turned around and tried to sell everybody out, right?
How so? Explain it. Telling me I sold out their movement, you know? Their movement to make Molotovs, it's bizarre, you know?
Go around. I'm trying.
If you look at what had happened in the 30s, the unions weren't really helping the working people, and they certainly weren't helping the employers. Now, if you look at then Alinsky, there's a direct line from him to the student rebellions in the 60s, to Hillary Clinton, who wrote her dissertation on Alinsky, and then to Barack Obama, who was also a student of Alinsky's.
He worked as a community organizer. What?
They always say that if you don't like the conversation, then you change it.
Today, President Obama put forth similar populist themes, drawing on language you might recognize from the Occupy movement.
This country succeeds when everyone gets a fair shot. Well, it starts by making sure that everyone in America gets a fair shot at success. Restore fairness. Everyone does their fair share. Fair share, a fair shot. Competition is fair. Fair play, everybody gets a fair shot. Fair share. Fair play, a fair share. Fair chance, a fair share.
How surprising a speech was that?
I think this is an extraordinary speech.
President Obama spoke today, giving frankly, what was a barn burner.
If you look at Obama's January 2012 State of the Union address, it's what I call the Occupy State of the Union address.
No American company should be able to avoid paying its fair share of taxes, or we can restore an economy where
everyone gets a fair shot.
The Obama administration needs to use the messaging, income inequality, 99% versus the 1%, to get their agenda.
Structured chaos is something that was developed on the left by liberals that like to go out there and to cause confusion, anarchy, to break the rule of law, but at the same time they are controlling that process. So the more money and resources they pumped into the Occupy movement, the more it fit into their plans, which was structured chaos.
Lisa, who organizes the anarchists?
We all self-organize. We're organizing a horizontal movement.
Are the anarchists welcome in the Occupy movement?
We're all anarchists.
There's definitely a massive desire to sort of bring the violence of Europe over to America. And there's definitely coordination with people about how violent they can become and how targeted they should be.
Everyone was extraordinarily well behaved.
How many sexual assaults do you think that there have been here, or violent attacks?
I've heard probably like 10, at least 10.
It's anonymous behavior.
You should be very proud of what you have accomplished. And you should be very proud of what you do.
We're gonna do stuff. We're gonna do some stuff.
You have a bunch of kids that want their vehicle.
Occupy protest turned violent Saturday in Oakland. Some of the protesters threw bottles and flares and vandalized City Hall. This is a we're fighting. This is a new phase. Structure P is the Tina, Spain, 6 key members have been arrested. It doesn't mean that Occupy is dead. It is now the equivalent of the left's Tea Party.
I believe that Barack Obama owns the Occupy Wall Street movement. It would not have happened but for his class warfare.
owned and operated businesses, barely making ends meet, trying to do their best in a bad economy, and they've been victimized by this movement.
To see a place that I love so much be destroyed.
That's what they got out of all the blood, sweat, tears, and rapes.
Behave yourself! Behave yourself! Behave yourself! I want to fuck you at weapons! Behave yourself! Behave yourself!
He's got a brick in each hand, and he's throwing it now into the crowd.
Step up! Answer me for your business! Stop raping people! Stop raping people! Stop raping! Stop raping people! Stop raping the people! Yeah.